WeenCast, a Ween podcast with Rory Gibbons and Shane Prutzky.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Shane.
And this is Rory.
And this is WeenCast. Welcome.
Coming back at you.
We welcome everyone to another WeenCast. It's been a little while, but it's okay. We're going to go back in time again tonight, and we're going to talk about another one of the shows from our youth. We have a couple of shout-outs before we get started. First of all, we're very psyched that Ween announced a show in the Philadelphia area, which is still a local show for me, and Rory is planning on coming up for it. It's the Metropolitan Opera House, which I guess was closed down for a few years. Is that right, Rory? And they're reopening it?
I believe it's kind of been closed down for a while. I don't know exactly when it closed, but a little while. And it's apparently I don't know too much about it, except I've seen some pictures online, and it looks like a beautiful old school kind of theater. That
I'm
yeah,
really
man, we got some tickets for that.
Yeah. So we're definitely stoked to be able to say we'll be at that show. So we're really looking forward to that.
Yes. See
also,
you in Philly, bitches.
Yeah, see you in Philly, motherfuckers. Also, we wanted to get this out there now, as we usually kind of try to leave it as a surprise, what the next episode will be. But the next episode that we're going to be talking about, that we're going to be going back to the past shows, is 4/20/2000. It was Rutgers on April 20th, 2000. We want to throw this out there now because if you were at that show or know anybody who was at that show, please hook us up and tell us your stories. We'd like to be able to sort of do a viewer mail segment, so to speak. And that show, in my opinion, was kind of like a high water mark for that era of shows. It was sort of like a BC and AD kind of thing, before 420 and after 420. So we want to do a very special episode. We might even make it a two-parter. We're not exactly sure what we want to do yet, but we really want to go all in for the 420 show. So we'd really like to get some stories and comments. I have gotten a couple of things actually already, but we really want to get everybody that we can find that was at that show that has something to say involved, and get everyone's comments and everyone's stories for the 420 show.
It was a legendary show in our lives, and we'd love to hear from anyone who's been there, so that we can try to broaden the conversation.
I mean, it may even be something that we have to do an episode and just say we're probably going to do another episode about that show at a later date, or so. You know what I mean? Things that will come back to us or whatever while we're making that episode, because I just know there's a ton of stuff to talk about with that show, and we really want to do it justice and do it right. So if you were at the 420 show, or you remember that, and having buddies that went to it or whatever, hook us up.
4/20/2000, Rutgers, New Jersey.
Yeah, 420 show. So it's at WeenCast Podcast on Twitter, and it's WeenCastPodcast at Gmail. So, send us something on Twitter, send us an email with your thoughts and your stories, please, 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 please. So the show we're going to talk about tonight is fall of 99. So the Painting the Town Brown tour had ended on our last episode, and this was a small mini tour of about 8 shows that they played in the fall of 99. And we went to see the November 5th show, which was the Tralfalmadore Cafe in Buffalo, New York.
Yes, it was the third last show of the year.
So it was really getting to be the end of it also. It was a very short tour, and this was towards the end of it. It was Buffalo, New York.
And let me tell you, this shit is brown.
Yeah, I mean, we got tons of stuff to talk about with this show as well. Should we just go right into it and talk a little bit about how we got there and what happened that day and that night?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you could maybe start because you came up from Fleetwood, or you were in Ole still at that time.
I think so. Yeah. So you were at Penn State at the time.
Yeah, I was in State College. And
I guess it was just like, I don't remember exactly how we decided to go to this one, but I think it was probably just we saw the list of dates and it was like, well, we got to go to at least one of them. And Buffalo was
What
probably
day of the week
closest.
was that? Do you remember what day of the week that was?
I think it's a Friday. Yeah, it was a Friday night.
Because there was a show in Pittsburgh and a show in Columbus that Pittsburgh would have been a closer show, and Columbus wouldn't have been much further than Buffalo. So we certainly had other options. And Towson, Maryland. Well, I'm sorry, that's a different time. But
well, it's probably
yeah. So there were
also...
definitely other options. So I think we just went for it because I don't know. It was different. It was new. It was more of an adventure, I think, and it worked out on a Friday.
And also, I'm thinking probably because we went to the Toronto show and we had gone to Canada twice, so maybe like in our mindset, it was just kind of like, okay, well that's north, like that we could do that. It's not it's just basically the same type of direction or what, you know what I mean? I don't know. Like just thinking, well, we went up north to Canada, so let's go up north to Buffalo. I don't know what, probably.
I think we were more than happy to do it. I'm pretty sure that I would have been a student at Penn State at the time, so I wouldn't have just been able to go to a show in Buffalo in the middle of the week.
Yeah, I mean,
and
that's
so
also, it was probably because it was Friday.
I think we saw it was Friday, and that worked out with me, and then we became immediately enamored of the fact that we'd be retracing our steps to Toronto.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But this was the first show that it was just you and I. No one else,
Yeah, so this is my 6th show and your 7th show, and it was just the two of us.
Had I seen that
just
many
the
shows
two
at
of
that
us.
point?
I'm sorry?
Had we seen that many shows at that point? Was it really that many?
I was trying to count them up on my fingers. I thought so.
Let me just go back in 2, 3, 4. 6. Yeah, maybe 6 and 5, but yeah, you're right around there.
Yeah,
I think
so
this was my 6th. 4, 5, 6. I think this was my 6th and your 5th.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that. So this was the first show. It was just you and I. No one else had gotten on board. I don't even know if we asked anybody else.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really recall if there's any of those conversations. It'd be interesting to see if some of our friends could check in on that.
But this was also
at that point, dude. At that point, like a lot of the, not to go onto a sidebar, but a lot of the people we were hanging out with at this point, it's a couple years after high school, and so people are starting to spread out, and people are going to school, different places, and involved and busy with things, and let's just say, like, at that point is when we kind of started to separate ourselves from the pack as far as like our allegiance to Ween.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that like after the Toronto show is sort of like that was that tipping point in our minds where it was like we're in deep now. We went all the way to Toronto, and this show was, like this is what we're willing to do, and we're just continuing to do that. And I think that at this point, that's what's symbolic of, because you and I are going on this show by ourselves, like making it happen. And you had to come all the way up from, near the Reading area, all the way to pick me up in State College, and then go up to Buffalo. So certainly for you, it was even more of a trip.
Yeah, and I mean,
because you had to do that first leg by yourself.
Yeah, and I can't remember, like, I don't remember what job I had at the time, or, like, I'm assuming I must have had to, like, leave work early or something, like, come up in the middle of the day to be up there. like early evening. This was also the first show that I just drove my car, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like
the Horizon.
We went to that many shows, and it was the first time that my car was involved, which was a 1986 Plymouth Horizon. It was the first car that I ever owned. My parents had got it for me as a Christmas present when I turned 16. For anyone out there listening, Plymouth Horizon is the same thing as a Dodge Omni, which
there's probably another car that's the same too, like a Chrysler or something.
There probably was, yeah. But I mean, a lot of people would ask me like, "Oh, your Omni," and I'd be like, "No, it's a Horizon." But it's the same.
No, get
car.
it right.
Yeah, get it right. But you used to see them a lot back in the late 80s, early 90s, like mid 90s, up until you don't really see them that much anymore. But you used to see them all over the place because I mean, I guess it was a pretty real. It wasn't a very reliable car, but I mean, it carried its own. It pulled its own weight for a long time.
It did the best it could do, and that was your car for a long time.
Yeah, I had that car a long time.
Before you became Mr. Corolla, you were the the Horizon was the Shaymobile for a long time, and man, that car had a hard time going, but you gave it you really, I think, pushed the pedal to the to the floor and really got it to go. I mean, this trip, like, to get back to the trip, it was going from State College up to Buffalo, you kind of go up and over some mountains, and and I remember that everything like turned into like it was the Hill of Doom or the Highway of Doom, and that was because we were in a tiny little Horizon going up over the mountain by Phillipsburg.
And that's probably why the Horizon never really made an appearance for like a long trip like this, because it was like you weren't 100% sure that the Horizon would make it, there or make it home. You know what I mean? Like,
oh no, there was a risk. There was a risk.
Yeah, there was a risk. Yeah, there was definitely a risk involved with that car. But for this night, we did make it there and back in the Horizon. So I do remember that, like, by the time we had left State College, I'm pretty sure it was getting dark, or it was like already dark. I mean, you got to remember, this is early November, so I mean, it's dark at 5:00 in the afternoon.
It definitely got dark, not too far into the trip. We were driving in the dark, and especially because we ended up running late, which was because as we're driving up through just central Pennsylvania and north central PA, through the wilds of Pennsylvania, and we get across the border, and we have to go on I-86 for like one exit around like Salamanca, and we totally just missed it. And so we're just cruising, and we're just hanging out and having a good time, sort of singing Ween songs or whatever. And 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something later, I'm noticing that we're like getting closer and closer to Jamestown. And I'm just like, I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but I know it was just like, dude, we're heading the wrong way.
Yeah, like, in the days before, GPS, it's like nowadays if you miss like an exit or something like that, like immediately, because it's just on your phone or it's on your, GPS in your car. And, back then it was probably a few minutes until you realize like, oh, I don't think this is right, and that totally happened to us that night. Cause it was just, I just remember it being a lot of blackness, it's just,
it was dark out,
of nothing.
So we were in fairly unfamiliar territory.
Right. We had no idea exactly where we were going. I think you just had it on like, you just had a map. You didn't have it on anything. You just had a map. And, it was like, all of a sudden it was like, are we going the right way? And it's like, yeah, I don't think we are,
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. So and I'll have to take your word for it that like, that's where we went wrong, because I don't remember it at all. Like, I don't,
I
was
don't
just
remember
taking your
exactly
word
how
for
we
it.
crisscrossed off at 86, but we kind of ended up being on like smaller roads. Like, we definitely didn't take a highway in. So the last like hour, we were kind of just like winding through like a smaller route, like going through towns and like main streets and like street lights and stuff. But we finally did get there, and so before we started the podcast, we were discussing the name transformation. So the brown base has it listed as Tralfalmadore Cafe, and you can find that online. Shane's got the old ticket, and that says the Tralf. And then we're searching online and noticing that it's now called the Tralf Music Hall. So, anyway, so we get to at that point, the Tralfalmadore Cafe, and it was in some kind of strip mall. I remember going through what it seemed like the interior of a mall, like maybe even going up an escalator at one point.
Yeah. I don't know,
but we were just hustling through because we were running late, so we were just like flying.
Yeah, we'll put that question out there. If anyone knows, like, if the Tralf back then is the same as it is now, we just, like, we were just looking at like the website and stuff like that, and it just says the Tralf Music Hall. I have no idea if that's the same thing that existed back then, but at the time,
I seem to think it may be like an expansion or something. Because looking online at the seating areas for the music hall, I seem to remember the Tralfalmadore Cafe being a smaller venue.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would kind of.
That's what I'd love to get some input on if people out there are familiar.
I mean, when we were there, from what I remember, it was definitely in like a thing. I remember having to go like up steps to get to it, and like the whole rest of the like the strip mall that it was in, or like mall that it was like part of, that you like got to, it was like closed. Like everything else was closed, but that was like open. Was the entrance to this, Tralfalmadore Cafe, and then you went in, and I mean, it was really just like a bar from what I remember.
Yeah,
with
like there was a large bar that you almost was in a position to. So you came in, and I think I remember it being like a kind of a long rectangle where the stage would have been on the other end of it from where you come in on the entrance, I think. And then as you go through the initial area, that's ticketing and stuff like that, there is, like, once you get into the actual venue, there's like where the music's played, I think there was just kind of like a big bar that made it really accessible for everyone, like in the hall, like that was like up by the stage and stuff. And it was definitely a smaller place than like we had seen them at the Electric Factory like that summer. This was definitely a smaller place. I mean, I don't even think, from my like recollection of it, I don't even think this place held as many people as like the Troc in Philly. Yeah, I don't remember, dude. I think it's bigger than the Troc, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm not. If anyone has any more insight on that, that would be awesome. But I remember going in, and it was like carpeted, or at least where we were was carpeted.
Yeah,
and we weren't old enough to drink yet. That was still like a month and a half until my birthday. So we definitely weren't drinking, but I remember the floor just being like all like wet and like almost like a squishy swamp because of the people pouring drinks. But I think it was like a carpeted floor. Yeah. And we got in late, so I'm pretty sure we didn't end up being all that close to the front.
At least not at first. When we first got there, it was kind of like, oh shit. So it had already started, So this is the first show that we had gone to where we didn't make it for the beginning. We didn't make it for the start of the show, which sucked. But it was still a great time and still a great night. I really don't think we had missed that much of it, but I remember us going, getting there and going in and just sort of like asking one of the dudes in the crowd, like, hey, how long have they been on? And him just like not knowing like what I was talking about. It was like, how long has it, how long have they been playing now? And he's just like, oh, we're into the second hour here, gentlemen. And it's just like, oh fuck. Like we've already missed like an hour of it, but I don't think it was quite that much. Like do you remember what song they were playing when we got there?
I don't, dude.
Neither do I.
I don't remember it being quite an hour, but to be honest, I'm not sure. But this is a really long show, actually.
Right.
And so there was still so much show to go after we got there. So even though we missed the beginning, it was still amazing. So yeah, you think, I can read through the set list if you...
Yeah, man, go ahead.
You think we're ready? So, all right, so we got open with She Wanted to Leave, The Golden Eel, The Grobe, Piss Up a Rope, Captain Fantasy. Don't get too close to my fantasy. Touch my tutor, even if you don't. Mister, would you please help my pony? Voodoo lady, mutilated lips, spinal meningitis, Buckingham Green, never squeal. Mr. Richard Smoker, waving my dick in the wind. Dr. Rock, you fucked up. Roses are free. Homo Rainbow, Big Jilm, Ocean Man, Take Me Away, Sketches of Winkle, Fat Lenny, Bananas and Blow, The Blarney Stone, Hoffer Teacher, Little Birdie, Buenos Tardes Amigo, and then for an encore, Nan, Pumpin' for the Man, Old Queen Cole, Reggae Junkie Jew, that kind of basically just goes right into an LMLYP.
Fucking A right, man.
That is... I didn't count that up, but that feels like a long set list.
Yeah.
And a shout out to Bugnish Bockwinkel for his YouTube video, which clocks in at 3 hours and 53 seconds.
Fucking A right. I remember, I'll throw this in there real quick. I remember getting this bootleg on CD, and it had to be broken up into 3 CDs, and which it, with a
which
a
instantly
long
makes
like
the show which instantly makes the show legendary.
Right. If it has to be put on 3 CDs, it's like that it's a long show, and it's like it's going to be the shit. But I remember the 3rd disc, I think, was the entire encore of Nan, Pumpin' for the Man, Old Queen Cole, Reggae Junkie Jew, and LMLYP. And I remember playing disc 3 of this show a fuckload of times.
Basically, it's like one of the single greatest individual discs of a live show that you'll find.
You could start getting into is it possibly one of the greatest CDRs ever? It's like, okay, we're not going to go quite that far, but but I remember
There's
was
probably
for this
some
show,
Frank
was
Zappa ones that might top it.
Yeah, right. So for this show, it was instantly just disc 3,
Yes,
but
when
the
in
rest
doubt,
of it
just
was,
throw disc 3 in.
yeah, but the rest of it was really cool too. So there's a few highlights that we wanted to touch on.
There's a few highlights. Bear with us.
More than a few, yeah. So first of all, we'll start at sort of the beginning. She Wanted to Leave, I think, is the first time we had seen as an opener, and I don't think that's a very common opener. You know what I mean? That's kind of a bizarre one for them to start the show with.
Yeah, a lot of times it ends up being almost like a sort of slower break in the middle of the concert.
Right.
So to open up with that is actually, it's too bad we weren't there for the opener, right? But
yeah.
That was one of the things where getting to listen to the bootleg later on and realizing wow, this show was even better than I thought.
Right, right.
But yeah, that's a fantastic way to open a show. That's a favorite song of mine.
Right. There were some new songs at the time, which they mentioned. The Grobe was the 3rd song that they played. So that's still new. Now, we've heard that a few times now, but it's still, considered a new song.
They didn't. The interesting thing is this show only had a few songs from the upcoming album, White Pepper, but the shows over the summer, I think, seem to have some more, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, that they definitely sprinkle in a few of those songs, and they haven't been played much because they just started playing them.
Yeah. So the Grobe was early in the show, and kind of jumps out in the set list as being a new song. Captain Fantasy, I don't think we had heard live.
That was the first time we had ever heard Captain Fantasy live.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. I love it. Captain Fantasy is amazing.
Oh my god, yeah.
And to go right into Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy, back to back, not right into, but back to back. Come on.
Right.
I think one of them in the show is Double Fantasy.
Yeah, it's it's the Double Fantasy, Captain Fantasy and Don't Get Too Close.
Isn't that a John Lennon album, Double Fantasy?
Yeah, totally.
I wonder if there's a connection there. Aaron Freeman, if there's a connection there, can you put a little YouTube note for me and just say Yeah, bro, there's a connection.
Yeah. And I will say, before we get too far into it, it does seem to me like they were trying to make an effort to make it a little bit different than like the summer shows. You know what I mean? Like this show
Absolutely.
definitely, I think, has a way different like feel to it and a different vibe than, the Paint the Town Brown tour from that summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
And
when you
that's
sometimes
that's
when
a
you have
prime
these
example.
sometimes when you have these short mini tours, right? Then I think you end up get that. There, it's like a more concentrated burst.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the Captain Fantasy is like a perfect example of like, okay, now that's something we haven't seen yet, and like that's fucking awesome, and so. But there's more of that. We'll keep going. We'll keep going here. Touch My Tutor. That's another one that I don't think we had seen that up until this time.
No, that's another one. That's the first time we heard that one as well. There's a lot of great songs that this is the first time we've heard them live, which is pretty cool.
Right. Even If You Don't, which is still new, is played right after that. The Voodoo Lady, of course, is fucking rocking as usual. The Talk Box gets in there on Voodoo Lady for this night. And then got a couple of Mollis tunes. Buckingham Green is really
Never
good.
Squeal. Never Squeal. Well, first off, Buckingham Green is always great in my mind. And
Right.
So certainly that's just always an epic song. And then Never Squeal is a real rarity. It's first off the first time we ever heard it, but also they haven't played it overall very much.
Right.
Just over 100 times total. So it's definitely a rare one. And of course, Homo Rainbow, which was kind of in vogue around this time, but still just a great song. And what else can you say except Big Jim, motherfucker? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, man. I totally know what you're saying.
I mean, it wasn't the first time that we heard it, but that's fine. Because anytime you hear Big Jim,
Yeah.
it's just blows your socks off.
Yeah.
Right?
Man.
The Blarney Stone on this show, or this concert, I'm not a huge I'm Blarney Stone guy. In fact, at the beginning, it's funny because Diener, at the beginning of the song, he's like, "Oh, here's some frat boy shit," and so it's kind of like totally ironic, that they play it. It's almost like Beastie Boys doing "Fight for Your Right to Party." It was basically like a spoof on like heavy metal bands or hair metal bands or whatever,
Right.
And so in my mind, it's usually not like a notable one, except this is like in particular like super raunchy. Like they brought out the raunch, and so yeah, they brought out the raunch.
But I think you might that is very true. But I think you might have skipped over one there, which is Sketches of Winkle.
Yeah.
Which is another one that I don't know if we had seen that one up until this point.
I'm not sure.
But that's a fucking rockin' tune, and that sort of lost its way there for a long time, and then sort of like came back in like the late 2000s. I think that one was sort of gone for a long time, but at this time, during this show, that was a fucking rockin' tune as well. And then what else? Little Birdie.
Yeah, Little Birdie's fantastic. Well, you get your Hot for Teacher, which was also in vogue at that time. Right. And then Little Hot Birdie. I mean, come on, Little Birdie.
I mean, it's crazy. Rory, you had put on our sheet that we look at while we're reading the set list. Total times played 27. Fucking 27. That's it. I mean, that to me is just insane. Over the course of their whole career, you're looking at Brown Bass, it only pops up 27 times. You know?
Yeah, dude. Unless you're like following Ween, like every show every year, you kind of have a rare opportunity to ever even hear a song like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always loved Little Birdie. That was always part of, there's the collection of songs on the album, like in a row. And Little Birdie is always one of them, with Big Jim and it's like, I always just love that, like, sort of, those songs always have a special place in my heart.
Well, it's the beginning of Pure. It's the first song on Pure Guava, which is like, you put on Pure Guava and it's just like, Little Birdie. Buenos Tardes is the end of the regular set,
which is a fabulous rendition. This isn't one of the ones. There's a time period at some point where Jeaner starts doing like little solos of his own. That's not going on, but it's really well done. Diener is like at his like greatest with this like Buenos Tardes Amigo. He's just like, the song goes, like there's this interlude in the middle where the song just goes these soaring like, and then suddenly it's like, he just kind of slows it down, almost like an acoustic for a second, where it's like this like more somber like instrument or solo, and just an awesome version of Buenos Tardes Amigo.
Yeah, and the crowd does the clapping, and no one. It's not like Jeaner like starts like a clap along or anything like that. Like the crowd just starts doing like the, and that actually happens twice. The first time it's not really where it's supposed to go, but the second time that the crowd starts it, it's like perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's after he does the the guitar solo and the so a really cool rendition of that.
And at that point at the show, so that's when they take the quick break and they have the encore. But because this show is so long, and after the Blarney Stone they kind of take a short break, it almost feels like a double encore. It's kind of crazy. Like that's like a super rare thing, and maybe this show is where I discovered the myth of the double encore. Like can they actually do a double encore? It's like they took that break, and so it just makes it that layer of more badassness, because you already were wondering after Blarney Stone, are they going to keep playing? What's going on here? Because they stopped for a little while, and it's like, we're taking this little break or whatever's going on. And then the same damn thing after Buenos Tardes, so it's like, just adds to the epic feel that it's almost like a double encore. And then in the encore, I mean, Old Queen Cole, Reggae Junkie Jew, LMLYP, it's almost like one song into the other, like that whole last like half hour of the concert. And that blew my mind. That's a mind-blowing... That's like, talk about a 30-minute segment of a Ween show. I mean, that's a great... If you had to make like a best of Ween live disc, or like just a couple discs, that last 30 minutes from Old Queen Cole to the end of LMYP would be on that disc.
Yeah.
Like, or on that collection, on that like, MTV Presents, like box set, like history of rock and roll box set, that would be in there. Like, I mean, it's first off, Old Queen Cole is another one like Little Birdie that was only played 24 times total.
Yeah.
And of course it was also the first time we ever heard it, maybe even the only time. I'm not sure, but it's definitely not one that's familiar.
It's very possible. I mean, I know I had heard Reggae Junkie Jew maybe like once or twice after that, but Old Queen Cole, man, I don't know, man. I don't. And same thing with Little Birdie. It's like, I'm pretty sure we had heard that maybe once or twice again after the show, but Old Queen Cole, I don't know about that, dude.
I don't believe we've heard Old Queen Cole more than once live.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing.
But
and terrifically old school.
For this show, I mean, like you're saying, like what jumps out in my mind? Like I had mentioned, okay, it was all about, disc 3. And immediately, if you would be like, like remember the Tralf show, I'd be like Reggae Junkie Jew.
Yes.
It's just like, first of all, one of the things I wrote down in the notes preparing for the podcast was if you just sit down and listen to this whole show, the audio, there are people in the crowd like the whole night yelling for Reggae Junkie Jew. I mean, you can hear it multiple times. I don't know if it's the same people that just keep yelling for it, like in between songs. But it's like, how did they know? Did they know that they were going to play that night, or did they know that was one that they were going to throw in? If you go back and look at some of the other set lists from this fall tour, they do play it a couple more times. But I mean, there's no guarantee that you're going to get that like every night or anything of that like tour.
At this point, this is like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes into the show.
Right, but I'm just saying, like throughout the whole show, even like early on in the night, there you can hear people yelling, "Reggae Junkie Jew."
Oh, and, yeah, I'm just saying, it's just like, who knows? Like, all bets are off. People keep yelling it. They might play Reggae Junkie Jew.
Right. So it's like, that to me is just crazy, that you can hear that when you listen to this whole show, that people are yelling for that, and they actually do wind up playing it. Definitely the first time we ever heard it. Still a rarity. It's not quite as rare as some of the other ones, but it's definitely still a rarity. And just like when they
and also the first time we ever heard it.
Oh, but that by far definitely the first time we ever heard it.
Live.
But when they first start that song, and it's just like the fucking like bass, like I mean, it's just like fucking A right, man. I mean, it sounds so good, and it's just so cool.
It sounds way better live, in my opinion. IMHO. It sounds way better live on that Tralf show bootleg than it does on the album. And it came alive to me. Of course, it was a live show. It came alive to me at that Tralf show. And I admit to not ever fully appreciating that song on the album.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that.
Until I heard it live.
I'll agree with that. Yeah. I mean, again, it's like we were talking about in some of our other podcasts. When you're talking about some of those earlier songs, those earlier albums, it seems like it's something so simple, on the albums. But when they bring it to life as a 5-piece band, I mean, it's just, like you said, it comes alive. You know what I mean? It's there's no better way to say it, really. And I mean, this is a perfect example of that. It's dude. Just, you got fucking Dave on the bass, and I mean, that jam is rocking, man. I mean, Diener with the megaphone starts off the vocal, and I mean, it's just like, fucking A right, dude. Like, it's just, yeah. I mean, I remember being like fucking blown away, by Reggae Junkie Jew and LMLYP, but especially that, because it was just, I remember you saying to me like, yeah, man, they're working it out. Like they're figuring out like how to do it live, and I mean, it's just fucking awesome.
Dude, Dave was an all-star that night.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from the Reggae Junkie Jew to LMLYP, I mean, it's almost like just no break.
There's like 2 beats between it, and then they go right into it, basically. Like, it's pretty.
Yeah, I mean,
on top of each other. There's no like stop to be like, hey, we're doing this now. It's just
right. There's no break for the crowd to cheer or nothing. It's just boom, into LMLYP.
And another fantastic LMLYP. I don't know if any LMLYP that I've ever heard will ever be as epic as the one from January 1st, 1999. But, man, just another long, badass LMLYP jam.
Yeah, man.
They all do their, like, solos. Like I mentioned, Dave was an all-star. Dave's just slapping the bass, man. He's just, like, he's going on this crazy solo. And he's just, like, slapping the bass. And it's just, like, so funky. It's so funkadelic.
Yeah.
And then Glenn, one of my like all-time favorite like mini moments of Ween history is Glenn teases Eleanor Rigby for his part of the solo.
Yeah.
Like, that is the awesomest thing that
it's very subtle, It's very subtle, and it's just a split second. You know, if you're not actually paying attention while you're listening, you could miss it. You know, but I remember you caught it, and you were like, "Oh, Beatles." You know what I mean?
Then it was not to be, you know?
Yeah, it was like as if he's gonna just start doing the whole, you know, tune, but it's just one little like riff of Eleanor Rigby. You have to be paying attention, or you'll miss it. But it's in there, you know. But yeah, that was really fucking cool. The only thing about that jam is, you know. That's sort of one of the early examples that we had noticed of Jeter doing like the walk off. You know, he kind of just does like the, you know, I'm gonna let the boys take you out. Thank you, Buffalo, and then he just leaves, and it's like, okay, well now you know it's over. You know, which is we're not complaining because I mean it's a long ass show, and you know we have no complaints, but you know it's like, okay, well if he's not coming back out, they're not gonna play another song after this.
Dude, it's like the Jackson Browne song, like let the boys play, you know, just a little bit longer, you know.
Yeah. But they took care of us, you know. After Jeter, you know, left, they still, you know, they still looked after us. But
dude, it's hard to find too much bad things to say about this show.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not right. I'm not saying
nitpick.
anything bad.
But dude, truly, this was a fantastic show.
Absolutely.
This is a show this is one that I would say 100% recommend people go out and get the bootleg, at least listen to it on YouTube or wherever you can find it. It's just like a really fantastic cross section of Ween songs. There's definitely a lot of rarities, you know, old school rarities, right? Because this is still 1999. It's just, you know, because, like, you know, let's use Reggae Junkie Jew again as an example. Sure, it was the first time we ever saw it. And it's, like, around 140 times total times played, which is pretty rare, but not super rare. But it also, like, for the previous 5 years, that was only, like, the 6th time that had been played. And 3 times during that tour. So it was kind of like, even for the Ween world, for those last 5 years, that was a song that had disappeared, you know? And so it's just like this show, they like, you know, and we didn't see any other shows on this mini tour, but I know some of them are similar. Really brought it.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a different feel to this show that, you know, you could tell, and you can tell when you're just looking over the set list, that they were trying to do something different for, you know, I assume that whole fall tour than they had done, you know, that summer. You know what
it's like I mean? They took a break. They took a break from the long summer tour, because that was a long tour. That was pretty long in my estimation.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
they took a break from that and then hit this back up like rearing. And dude, the crowd was into it. Like, I just remember it being pretty packed in there, being hot and sweaty, and just like everyone chanting and yelling for songs, and like everyone was just into it, and you could like, you know, admittedly, it's a bootleg, so of course, you know, there's times when you know, you're kind of hearing some of the fans singing the songs and stuff, and it's like, but that's fantastic, man. It's like everyone's into it.
Yeah, it's part of the experience.
It was so, you know? Yeah.
Just a couple of quotes and things that they say, like in between songs and stuff. After Spinal Meningitis, Diener says, "That was the best version of Spinal ever." Which, you know, one of the things I've noticed, like going back and listening to these bootlegs, is like Diener has a way of saying that kind of stuff, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Not, you know, dude, not that it wasn't, but
it's Ween, so it's always the best of something at any given time.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Right. You know?
Like,
it's like, okay, we'll take his word for it. You know, he's the one who can make that call. You know, that's, you know.
He's just being honest.
Yeah. Before Ocean Man, Junior is getting ready and he has his mandolin. He gets the mandolin out. And you hear Diener say, "Well, look at the little minstrel boy with his little mandolin. Play us a tune, little man." Which I always liked. That was a good quote. I remember that, you know, listening to this show a lot and remembering that quote. And after they take that sort of Blarney Stone break that you had mentioned, Diener says, do you want us to play Put the Coke on My Dick? But then they don't play it. It's just, they just go, they just play Hot for Teacher after that. So he, I guess that's a tease, Put the Coke on My Dick, but they don't actually wind up doing it.
And in the middle of Hot for Teacher, they're having like a weird, like during, like they're just playing the instruments, and they're almost having a little conversation about hot wings. Someone wants some hot wings.
I didn't make a note of that, but
And Claude sounded really good. Claude's voice was really sounding good that night.
That's another thing I sort of noticed when listening to this bootleg. This is a nice quality show, I think, because it's like a smaller place. You get like some good sound on that. You get some good quality on that bootleg. Like the sound isn't just lost into like the air as much. And the drums are really, it's like the drums and the bass are very like sharp on this recording.
Yes, the bass is really good.
Yeah, like the bass and the drums are just really like sharp and sound really good. So this is definitely a show worth, going back and checking out. Just for the, the quality of the bootleg. A couple of other things that we would like to mention. Great crowd noises, definitely, and a lot of cool people, like we were saying, you could hear people yelling out the songs they want to hear and stuff like that. I remember being sort of off to the right side of the stage, and there being a couple of girls that were like in front of us and kind of dancing like close enough to us, even though they didn't have to be. And remember like thinking, okay, do these girls want us to do something? Like, do these girls want us to start talking to them or something? You know what I mean? And, it doesn't surprise me at all. We didn't do anything.
Dude, we suck. Dude, we were just young dorks. Like, we didn't know what to do. We were young dorks at a Ween show.
Yeah, but I specifically remember it's like, okay, this girl is very close to me right now, and she doesn't have to be. Like, there's plenty of room, like, in front of her, but she's, she seems to be sort of backing into me as she's, like, dancing, and it's like, does she want me to do something? And I didn't do anything. So...
Well, if she wanted anything, she should have tried harder, I guess.
I guess, yeah. I'm gonna blame her.
Oh well.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame those girls for you should have just said something. You're talking to a couple of just Ween dorks. One of the other things I'll mention is I got a shirt for this show, and that is a shirt that I'm not bragging or anything, but like. That has got to be a rare fucking shirt, because I don't think I've ever seen that on eBay or, I don't think I've ever seen that, like someone wearing that shirt at another show, or it's just like a turquoise blue, like a very like electric blue, like light blue with like pink, sort of like a Godween Satan, like pink, boognish in the upper chest, just off to one side, which is, typical of like the Ween shirts, at the time. And then the back just says, Ween Fall 99. And it's just, like we said, it's just like 8 shows. It's a very short, tour. And they just have those like dates. But, I mean... I've never seen that shirt pop up like anywhere. I mean, if anyone out there has that shirt, post some pics on Twitter or something, because that's the only time I've ever seen that was that night, and I bought one. I'm pretty sure I still have it, but
you should find a way. You should throw a picture up.
I'll see if I can dig it out and snap some pics, but I mean, that has got to be a rare shirt, because of all of like the tour shirts that you see pop up on eBay from time to time, and wherever else online, I don't think I've ever seen that one, since. I really haven't. So that's got to be a rare shirt. I mean, it makes sense because it's such a short tour. It's only 8 dates, and I don't know how many they had or what. But yeah, that was.
It makes it more exclusive.
But yeah, man.
But yeah, dude, I don't know how I don't have any memory of the ride home. But I just remember.
You might have taken a turn driving home. Like, you might have taken a big leg of, like, the trip home, maybe?
Maybe? Did you let me drive? I might have done. I don't remember. I just know that we pulled into State College, and it was right around sunrise.
Yeah, we got back. It was, like, the middle. It was, basically morning by the time we got home.
Do you have your ticket handy? What time did the show start?
I don't know if it will say on the.
Because you're talking about a 3-hour show.
Right. So,
and it's like a 4.5-hour drive or something like that.
So the ticket just says 8 p.m. So
yeah, so you figure we roll in there. Yeah, I mean 8 p.m. a 3-hour show. That show's going to be getting over a little after 11 by the time we get out of there, get out of the city, get on the road. We'd be rolling back into town at like 4:35 in the morning.
Yeah,
and that's optimistic, because the horizon, the Google Maps and whatnot. I think estimates based on speed limit, but I don't know if the horizon can really do like the 55, 65 range. So like, I'm pretty sure you kind of have to tack on, a few extra minutes for every like 100 miles that your drive is, or every hour that you're driving. Like, you have to kind of figure that it's, fewer miles you're going to be able to cover.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So and then man, I have to say thank you for driving at least most of the way. If I apparently drove some of it, and thank you for taking the Horizon because you had to then drive another 3 hours home, 2.5 hours home or whatever.
I'm pretty sure I had like crashed out like at your place in Penn State. I don't remember if I stayed the whole Saturday.
I don't remember. Maybe you woke up later and left. I don't really remember.
I don't remember. I probably just stayed with you guys like that Saturday and then just drove home like Sunday morning or something. But I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, I'm way glad that we did it. I'm way glad to have done it.
Yeah, dude. What a crazy drive up over the mountains. Up to the wilds of Pennsylvania, getting lost, driving through the darkness. And then an epic show.
Yeah.
With so many amazing high points.
I'm actually surprised, really, when you go back and think about it, that we weren't there later in the. It's a marvel that we even found the place. It really is, and I remember like the parking lot that we parked in being like this tiny little parking lot, and like somehow we got a space. It's like, how the fuck did we get that parking spot? Like. I mean, it was in the middle of the show. The show had already started. It's like, how was there still parking for us to park the car? You know what I mean? And but we did it, and it was, somehow it went down as smooth as it did. It's like just the fact that we got there late. It's like we were still lucky.
Well, dude, and we had never been to Buffalo before. We had driven past there to Toronto twice.
I haven't been to Buffalo since.
I'd never been to Buffalo before or since.
Yes.
No offense to anyone. I used to love the Buffalo Bills in the 90s. Big Jim Kelly fan. Big that whole era. Marv Levy, you're a god. So, but no, I mean, yeah, so it's all like a tiny miracle. And then and you think about, so I'm just going to riddle, I know we say the whole set list already, so I'm going to kind of be quick, but like, just so many amazingly awesome high points. She Wanted to Leave, The Double Fantasy, Touch My Tutor, Voodoo Lady, Never Squeal, Buckingham Green, Homo Ramo, Big Jim, Sketches of Winkle, Blarney Stone, because it's raunchy as hell, Hot for Teacher, Little Birdie, Buenos Aires Amigo, and the whole damn encore. It's like, this show doesn't stop delivering amazing. Yeah. And that's only like, I mean, I just have to restate the entire set list if I was being honest. Like, so many of these songs are just, I mean, like the Golden Eel rips it up. It's like, it's just, everywhere you look on this show, there is amazing songs.
And also some really great use of the megaphone. Like
a lot of megaphone use.
Never Squeal on the pusher is like, I'm pretty sure that's all megaphone. I don't think Sketches of Winkle has megaphone, but
Reggae
Old
Junkie
Queen
Jew?
Cole. Yeah, Old Queen Cole and Reggae Junkie Jew is like all straight up like megaphone. And Diener on the megaphone. I remember talking to some of our friends, when we got home like that Saturday, the next day, and just being like, Reggae Junkie Jew with Diener on the megaphone. And them just being like, what? And it's like, yeah, it happened, man. It's like we were there to see it, so just fucking great. Oh, and also during LMLYP, Diener on the talk box and throwing it over to Glenn, just doing like "Let me lick your pussy," and it's all like like with the sound effects.
Oh yeah,
like
and they're like dueling.
it.
It's like they're like dueling, right?
Yeah, right. They're like going back and forth.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. I'd overlooked
Glenn
that
has-
momentarily.
I don't know what the thing that Glenn, has or how that works, but it's like Diener on the talk box and then Glenn doing like the effects of just like, let me lick your pussy, and it's all,
Well, he's got his sassy keyboards,
Yeah, right. Something to do with a crazy keyboard. I have no idea.
The
but it sounds cool.
synthesizers.
So those guys flipping it back and forth. So just a lot of really cool little, things like that.
Well, no, it was fantastic. So it's like they're doing this little duel, like going back and forth, and Glenn's doing little like hints of Eleanor Rigby, and like it's just, I mean, man, woo, I'm getting all excited.
Yeah, so we definitely recommend that you go back and listen to this show. We want to thank Bognish Bachwinkle again for uploading the whole show.
Yeah, of course.
So go back and listen to this one. Do you have anything else to add? I just want to reiterate about the 420 show, unless you have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure I always get a shout out to Brown Base because outstanding work collecting all the data,
man.
and
Totally.
highly useful for reminiscing and thinking back on how things went down.
We love Brown Base, one of the best websites ever, basically.
Yeah, and then also, if anyone else was at that show, at the Tralfalmadore, the Tralf Music Hall 1999, anyone there in Buffalo, give us a shout out. Like, what did you think of the show? Comment below.
Yeah, give us a shout out on iTunes. Hey, write us a review. Subscribe on iTunes. It's fun. It's free. Helps out the show. Helps out the podcast.
Or lay down some comments on YouTube.
YouTube. Hit us up with some comments on YouTube. You can also find us on Stitcher. I always say archive.org, but I don't think I've uploaded the last 2 episodes. So
I would say don't worry about
that. No, I'll get back to archive.org.
No worries,
but
mate.
yeah, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Hit us up with some comments on Twitter. It's at WeenCastPodcast. And our email is weencastpodcast@gmail.com. And again, the next episode that we'll talk about our old school shows will be 4/20/2000. So
yes,
April
so this
20th
is just about 5-6 months later, 6 months later or whatnot, and
right.
Epic show, 420.
So
Rutgers.
So if you were at 420, I want to hear it, even if it's just like a 1-sentence little snippet. I want to hear what you have to say about it. So, either hit us up on Twitter. Takes, 2 seconds to write a tweet. So hit it up. WeenCast Podcast on Twitter or weencastpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, send us an email there. We'd love to hear your thoughts. It was a free show, to jog anyone's memory. It was a free show on Rutgers campus.
It was.
I could find the. I don't have the field name on the top of my available, but on Rutgers campus, April 20th, 2000.
I think it was part of what they called the spring fling or spring jam or something like that.
Yeah, there were definitely other bands playing beforehand. Ween was the highlight.
Yeah, the headliner. Ween was definitely the headliner. So if you were at that show or you have anything that you can say about that show, hit us up, okay? Because we want to do that show and we want to do that episode of the podcast, justice. All right?
Absolutely.
You got anything else, Rory?
Man, I think thanks everyone for listening, and Great show. Awesome times. Ween is awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Hit us up. We love you.
All right. Peace be with everyone. We're out.
Peace. We out.